8 minutes ago, breaking from the Associated Press, the Israeli military says it mistakenly killed 3 Israeli hostages in Gaza. They're admitting to that number. I'm just like, what does it take for them to admit it at this point? It must be so brazenly obvious that they were the ones that did it. Anyway.
Let's play this clip of a guy who is from the West Bank city of Jenin, Ahmed Tobasi. My understanding is from Mark Goldberg, who does a podcast. I can't remember the name of it at the moment, but it's on. It is on Foreign Affairs, and apparently the head of the ICC has visited Israel in the West Bank. Now, Israel is not subscribed to the International Criminal Court, but Palestine does. And I think Israel's issue is that, well, how can Palestine subscribe to the International Criminal Court if they're not a nation? Of course, that also begs the question of, like, well, then who are you at war with? Mm-hmm. Is that a civil war that you're waging? Like, who are you at war with?
As they say, people in Palestinians don't want Israel to have a right to exist as a country, but it's inherent in it is that Palestinians don't have a country.
So Democracy Now! Spoke with Ahmed Tobasi, and he is in the West Bank, and this is pretty nefarious stuff. He runs something called the Freedom Theater in occupied West Bank. In Jenin, and it involves teaching kids theater, and they have such nefarious things like books there and video recordings and stuff like that. And apparently the IDF came in, ransacked the place. He knew that they were coming door to door, so he was there waiting for them and basically saying, look, we got nothing in here, come in, I'm happy to cooperate with you. And they just ransacked the place and arrested this guy. Here's, you should see the whole interview, but we'll play a couple of minutes.
Yeah, he was detained for 24 hours and he describes his experience.
And now.
There is no words, actually. I could not find words to describe the pain, the sword that we have. As a Palestinian, and especially the people in Jenin and Jenin camp. I'm sitting in the middle of my office and Mustafa's office, and for me, it's just like everything is destroyed, and you see all this mess, and I don't know why. It's because this is theater. It's not a military base. It's not a terrorist house. It's not an armed place, or there is no guns. There is books, pictures, cameras, music instruments. All of it being destroyed. The whole theater being like all computers, all offices being destroyed, and they've been rotting and writing and drawing Hebrew things all around. And just before yesterday, I was actually in my house, which is in front of the Freedom Theater. And I know I was waiting. They're going to come to check us in the house because they're going house to house. They're arresting everyone from like 13 to 60, 50 years old. And I was hearing them. They're coming to my house because they're going house by house. And then they just broke the door of my house and just went out to them and told them, please, there is children here. We are a whole family here, and we can do whatever you want. There is no need for violence. There is no need to do anything. But quickly, they put the guns on me. They took me, put me down, and they start to beat me. And I don't know why. I was telling them, like, I have a Norwegian passport. I'm a Norwegian citizenship, but they didn't care. They stormed in. They broke all the house. They broke everything, any electronic stuff, any glass, and they took my brother too. The children were screaming, crying, and even they were screaming on them. And because I I understand a little Hebrew. They were swearing at the children. They were screaming at my mom and dad, which was old people. And then they start to beat me, and then they handcuffed me, and they took me, and they put some even like army clothes in me, and they start to take pictures of me, taking poses soldier by soldier to show their girlfriends they are heroes. But while I was under arrest, under the guns, and they were taking these pictures for me. And then they put me in a truck. They took me to Al Janama checkpoint, and they throw me in the mud. It was raining. They throw me beside the street where all the jeeps, the Vigeland army go around me. And I don't understand what is going on. Are they gonna drive on me? Are they gonna kill me? I don't know what is going on because I was blindfolded. And then they put me in another truck, and they took me to other place where they throw us again outside, start to do like an immediate interrogation about my identity, and they intelligence, but it's outside intelligence in the rain. They didn't let me even take my shoes or clothes to cover myself. It's December, it's very cold with the rain, and it was a torture in somehow, psychologically torture, mentally torture, that all the time the soldiers go around you, their guns touching you, and you just waiting the moment when they're gonna shoot you. Are they gonna drive on you? Are they gonna smash you? And they take you from place to place, makes you walk that you don't know without shoes, with the mud. So it was a whole crazy. I cannot describe. This is happening. For me, it takes me directly to 2002 when I was 17 years old. It's exactly the same thing happening. The Israelis have the machine time to bring you back 20 years just with one button, with one invasion. And for me, I am wondering how long this is going to happen again and again in the same way. And still the whole world looking, and they cannot do anything. For us, we as a Palestinian,
there's more. You should check this out at Democracy Now! But a reminder, this is in the West Bank,
Yep.
where there is no Hamas. Impossible to, this is just wholesale intimidation and oppression
and erasure. I mean, when they go for cultural centers and so the Zionist project has been aided by pretending like Palestinians had no culture before this. And what's a good way to keep that narrative going is to target centers of culture like theaters and libraries and universities.
And kids. I mean, it's appalling. It's just appalling. And note, I think what he said there is that they tried to put him in military garb to make it look like, and so when you look at these photos of very hard to trust the numbers, even though the Israelis were bragging that the Israeli Defense Forces were bragging that they were killing one Hamas fighter for every 2 civilians. Very hard to trust that number. And remember, that's on the outside, right? Mm-hmm. So, it's far more likely that they're killing more than 2 civilians per Hamas fighter. And we know these numbers. And not to mention, was 98,000 buildings in Gaza destroyed? This is just a wholesale ethnic cleansing. And people get caught up on whether it's the term genocide is accurate or not. There's certainly experts who have weighed in and said that it is. I'm sure there are some that say that it isn't. But that's all just a way of somehow trying to make it it's only ethnic cleansing. I mean, there's absolutely no controversy over the idea that this is ethnic cleansing, that this is full-on oppression and whatnot. The idea that to get hung up on the word genocide because, you're not killing all the Palestinians. You're not threatening the existence of all Palestinians because in the West Bank, there isn't the wholesale slaughter that there is in Gaza, although we've seen nearly 300 people killed in the West Bank since just over the past couple of months. But the bottom line is, these are war crimes. They are in many respects crimes against humanity. None of this is even remotely controversial to say. There's just simply there is no international law justification for what we're seeing here.
Brett Stevens had the point, which I thought is just so silly. Like, if they wanted to commit genocide, they would. I mean, foreign relations exist. Like, yeah, like if there was no other countries and Israel was the only piece of land on this entire planet surrounded by ocean, I think, and somehow they had like just for this experiment, yeah, I think they probably would be doing even more. But they're doing it under the guise of anti-terrorism now because that's what they can get away with, instead of Joe Biden and Ted Cruz say like they're actually the most careful military on earth.
Right. I mean, it is quite clear that the Israeli government wants to push every single Palestinian out of Gaza into Egypt. So the idea, but the only thing, and to some extent they're attempting to do that, but there are constraints. There are constraints, and because presumably it would be absurd for them to assume that there is no line in which they couldn't cross where the American public would put pressure on Joe Biden. They certainly think they have a lot of room, and as long as they can continue to justify it, as long as they can continue to try and justify it, I'm sure to a certain extent some of them are shocked at how much they're being able to sort of get away with before there's even talk of restricting their access to weapons. It's really it's just a horror show.
And and they also rely so heavily on like that kind of semantics by someone like Brett Stevens, because like
pedantry.
But it's pedantry, but also because of the plausible deniability of bombs, because of the distance between who's dropping the bomb and where the bomb gets dropped. And that's why the Israeli military is having to admit that they killed those 3 hostages in Gaza because it was done by ground troops, and there's no plausible deniability that they had mistakenly identified them. But in terms of like the hostages that have been held by Hamas, I have no doubt that some of them have died because of the indiscriminate bombing, the record-breaking number of bombs dropped. But in the end, they'll just blame it on Hamas's barbarity. And they're hoping that that kind of cognitive dissonance allows them to continue doing whatever the hell they want, like when appealing to an American audience.